Rebecca Odell Townsend has been to the Stark 912 Patriots once prior, and we were fortunate for her to present on the Constitution Part 1. She has a two-part presentation. Tonight will be the second part. She's from St. Petersburg in Florida. She travels the whole state of Florida. If anybody's ever been on her site, she lists all her speaking engagements and where she's going to be. It amazes me that she fills up so much of a particular month. I've seen her fill up as many as 15, 20 dates a month, and she just goes from one group to the next to the next. And all she asks for is her expenses to be covered as they can possibly be. She does not charge a fee. She's a phenomenal speaker. She's an appellate court constitutional lawyer, and she's just a wonderful constitutionalist with a great deal of knowledge. There is no way that you're going to walk out of here tonight without learning several things. So, again, she's here. I'd like to welcome Rebecca. Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Okay, I brought with me tonight a quote that encapsulates what we're going to talk about tonight, and I want you to tell me who said this. Okay, this is what we're going to talk about. Quote, "The issue today is the same as it has been throughout all history, whether man shall be allowed to govern himself or be ruled by a small elite." Who said that? Right off the bat. Good job. Too bad we don't have any free dessert here or anything for you, right? Water. We have water. I have water for you. Okay, I'm going to say it again. Everybody pay attention. This is what we're going to talk about. Quote, Thomas Jefferson. "The issue today is the same as it has been throughout all history, whether man shall be allowed to govern himself or be ruled by a small elite." And I'm going to start out tonight with the part I always start out with, and that's the Declaration of Independence. And that is the first part of the Declaration of Independence, the 5 self-evident truths upon which this nation was founded. And they are truths with a capital T because they're true for all men, all time, and everywhere. And we, as far as I know, are the only country ever founded on these 5 self-evident truths. And of course, you all know them. All men are created equal. All men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And I probably don't have to remind you all that these rights are only inalienable because they're God-given. If they're given by the government, they're not inalienable because the government could take them away. If they're given by popular vote, they're not inalienable because popular vote could take them away. And I want you to remember this above all. If they were given to you by the Constitution, they would not be inalienable. The Constitution can be amended, ignored, abolished. You do not have inalienable rights because they're in the Constitution. For instance, you don't have the right to bear arms because we decided to add a Second Amendment to the Constitution. You have a right to bear arms because you have a God-given inalienable right to protect your life, your liberty, and your property. So they can argue all they want about what the word is. It doesn't matter to me. My rights do not come from the Constitution. They come from the Creator. So all men are created equal. All men are endowed by their Creator, that in order, all men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that in order to secure these rights, which rights? Your God-given inalienable rights, governments are instituted among men. In other words, the only legitimate purpose of any government is to secure your God-given inalienable rights. Well, you know the Declaration of Independence also says that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? What does among these mean? It means there are others. And if you didn't know it, I'm here to remind you that all of your rights are not listed in the Declaration or in the Constitution. And if you do not know what your inalienable rights are, then how can you know if the government is trampling them or securing them? And some of your rights that are not in the Declaration or listed in the Constitution have been in the news lately. Have you ever heard of the right to freedom of conscience? Been in the news lately. Not in the Declaration, not in your Constitution, one of your God-given inalienable rights. What about the right to marry, have children, and direct the education and upbringing of those children? We've had some court cases on the wrong side of that inalienable right. Again, if you do not know your inalienable rights, how do you know if the government's securing them or trampling them? So all men are created equal. All men are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that in order to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, that these governments derive their power from the consent of the governed, and finally, whenever any government becomes destructive of these ends, which ends? Securing your God-given inalienable rights, it becomes the right, the duty of the people to alter or to abolish that government and to establish one that will, correct? 5 self-evident truths. And then the part that a lot of Americans have never read is the rest of the Declaration of Independence, where we go into great detail as to what it is the King of Great Britain did to violate these 5 self-evident truths. And I really want to encourage you, if you have never read or haven't read lately the entire Constitution and the entire Declaration of Independence, you need to do that. Thomas Jefferson also said the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And you cannot be vigilant if you do not know these 2 documents. And I do not believe that you can understand the Constitution if you do not know the Declaration of Independence, because they correspond almost exactly. And I'm going to give you some examples of that tonight. Well, before we go on to the part a lot of Americans have never even read in the Declaration of Independence, I want to take a little detour, and I hope you're going to understand why I do this. I want to talk to you a minute about a man called Sir William Blackstone. Sir William Blackstone was a member of the House of Lords. He was a professor of Oxford University, and in 1765, he wrote a several-volume treatise called Commentaries of the Laws of England. These commentaries were very popular in England, but they were especially popular in the American colonies. They were so popular in the American colonies that not only did we import them here, all the way up until this revolution, and every single time they were imported, they were completely sold out. We imported in 1771 1,400 sets alone, and they were sold out before they even got off the docks. But not only did we import them and buy the commentaries of the law, we started printing American editions of the commentaries of the law of England. We know that the commentaries of the law were very popular with our founders for 2 reasons. One reason is our founders used his exact language in our Declaration of Independence. Laws of nature and of nature's God, Sir William Blackstone. And a lot of the other exact language in our Declaration of Independence all comes from Sir William Blackstone. But the only other reason we know that the commentaries were very popular with our founders is that we actually have, to this day, a list of those who pre-ordered the first American edition of the Commentaries of Law of England. And among those who ordered and completely sold out the first 1,000 sets of these commentaries, and it was a big treatise, several volumes, were James Wilson, who drafted the U.S. Constitution, John Jay, the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Adams, our 2nd president, founding father, Thomas Marshall, who was John Marshall's father, who was a Supreme Court Justice, Nathaniel Greene, that great American patriot and aide-de-camp to George Washington. 16 signers of the Declaration of Independence and 6 participants of the Constitutional Convention were on that one list alone. We don't know who bought all the other sets that were imported or printed in the in the colonies at that time, the American colonies at that time. We don't know who read used commentaries. We don't know who read borrowed commentaries, except one man, Abraham Lincoln. If you will remember, Abraham Lincoln was a merchant out on the frontier of America. And one day, Abraham Lincoln bought a barrel of used goods. And in that barrel of used goods were the commentaries of the Law of England by Sir William Blackstone. And as we were taught, he studied law at night, but you probably didn't know what he was studying was the commentaries of the Law of England by Sir William Blackstone. And as you know, he studied law from the commentaries, stopped being a merchant, hung out his shingle, and as they say, the rest is history, right? Abraham Lincoln is what Thomas Jefferson would have referred to as a Blackstone attorney, meaning he only learned to practice law by reading Blackstone. However, if Abraham Lincoln even if he had gone to law school, if he had gone to Yale or Harvard or William and Mary, he still would have studied the commentaries of the law of England by Sir William Blackstone. The commentaries were taught in American law schools until about the 1930s. In the 1930s is when American law schools threw off teaching natural law and started teaching the evolutionary theory of law, which is what we have today and the big mess we have today. Well, I hope you're going to understand why I went into that. Well, let's get into the part of the Declaration of Independence where we go into great detail as to what it is the King of Great Britain did, not only to violate these 5 self-evident truths, but also to put us under absolute tyranny and despotism. You can follow along with me. I'm not going to read everything. I'm just going to read the ones that pertain to what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. And I want you to try to remember them because we're going to get back to them. Here's what we say he did. He refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. King of Great Britain. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance. Let's see if I can change your thing. He has obstructed the administration of justice. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws. He's deprived us in many cases of the benefit of a trial by jury. He's transported us beyond seas for pretended offenses, and he's abolished the most valuable laws. One little cursory look at our Declaration of Independence, and you can see that our founders were very familiar with the use of what to inflict tyranny on these colonies? The judiciary, right? The judges. They were very familiar with using judges and the judicial system to inflict tyranny on these colonies. So let's look over in our Constitution on what it is they did to remedy the situation. I'm going to read to you from Article 3, Section 1. And as you know, the Constitution, the different articles of the Constitution deal with the different, you know, y'all are supposed to be carrying your little Constitution. See, we have somebody over here. Y'all should, I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said, every day, read your Bible and your Constitution. Okay, anyway, we're going to get to Article 3, Section 1. And as I was saying, each article deals with the different branches of government. Article 3 deals with the judicial branch. Here is Section 1. I'm going to read it to you. It has a lot into it, so don't panic. I'm going to break it down for you, okay? Here we go. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges, both of the Supreme and the inferior court, shall hold their offices during good behavior, and shall at stated times receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. Let's break it down. Did you notice that they fixed something they were complaining about in the Declaration of Independence? They were complaining that the king had made the judges dependent on his will alone for their tenure of their office and the payment of their salaries, right? So he could control the judges, correct? What did we put in our declaration? In our Constitution? We put right here that our judges will receive for their services a compensation which cannot be diminished as long as we keep them in office. As long as we keep the judge or justices in office, and it doesn't say what we have to pay them. So let's say if we agree to pay them $1 a year, we can't bump it down to 50 cents if we don't like what they're doing and we choose to keep them in office, right? That's what it says right here in our Constitution. Did you notice also in this section what court the Constitution establishes? The Supreme Court. Who establishes the lower federal courts? Congress, right? And if Congress establishes the lower federal courts, what can Congress do? Disestablish a lower federal court or the lower federal courts, correct? That means, if you didn't know it, Congress could get rid of the Ninth Circuit tomorrow if they chose to do so. It's right here. Well, also inherent in this is that Congress controls the jurisdiction of the lower federal courts. In order to get into a federal court, you have to come under a statute passed by Congress. And if Congress controls the jurisdiction of the lower federal courts, what can Congress do? It can expand or limit that jurisdiction as it sees